thank you very much for joining us today for this special HBXL event. We're going to be discussing the changes to UK building regulations, which became mandatory on the 15th of June 2022. But firstly, a couple of quick introductions. I'm Joanna and I'm the Managing Director of HBXL Building Software. And I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague, Andy Morel. And Andy is a really important member of the team, playing a vital role in the software development here at HBXL. He's not one of the software coders, but he's actually critically part of the content development team in terms of the estimating content, the estimating calculators, the specifications being up to date with latest building regulations, and their integration with PlansXpress. So Andy is you're an engineer by trade, Andy, is that right?
That's right, yep, I'm a structural engineer.
Great. So you're the right person to be talking to today in terms of this subject. And I have to admit, everybody, that this isn't my forte. I very much lean on Andy and the development team in terms of their expertise. So I'm going to be learning during today's session as well. So I'll be in the same boat. Hopefully this isn't death by PowerPoint, everybody. There's quite a lot of slides to get through, but there's quite a lot of detail to understand in terms of these new regs. And importantly, there is a big impact on home extensions and renovation type works as well, where perhaps traditionally it's been reserved for bigger projects or perhaps new builds. So do pay attention during this session, and you'll find also that there are slides available as a PDF that you can download to go through this lot at your leisure. Let's put it that way. So we're going to be explaining today why are these changes happening, the impact on HBXL software. So if you're already an HBXL software user, you're probably keen to understand what we're doing to ensure that you're complying. And towards the end of this broadcast, I'm going to be giving you a few details on solar, so that's solar PV panels, battery storage, and also electric vehicle charging points. Is there an important part of some of these regs changes? But Andy will be telling you about the detail and where they fit within those changes. Okay, so as well as that, you do qualify for an hour's free coaching from our renewable energy partner, Comera Energy. And some of you may already have met with Jordan Davies. She's a member of Team HBXL, one of our experts, and she generously gives time to HBXL software users to help gen them up on solar PV and how it can improve our builder community's businesses by being able to offer solar and EV and battery points. But anyway, back to the new building regulations. I've already mentioned the when, that being the 15th of June 22. But if you're concerned about a project that's already underway, you don't need to be. Those projects are kind of during this like transition period. So basically, if you did have building regulation approval before the 15th of June, then those old standards still apply. So I'm sure there's a bit of a few moments. And furthermore, there's a bit of a grace period. So if you've got your regs in before 15th of June 22, you've got until 15th of June 23 to actually start that work before the approval lapses. But obviously do be aware, if you get approval after the 15th of June 22, then obviously the building work is going to have to comply with new building regs. Andy, I'm going to put you on the spot with a question very quickly. Do you imagine there's much cost impact of these changes, or just very broadly speaking,
I think that the cost impact's likely to be more focused on extensions than it is on new builds. That the changes are more wide-ranging to extensions. Yeah.
Yes.
I think one of the kind of big impacts which we maybe miss otherwise is that for renovations, just things like changing windows in a house now, there's no grace period for that,
right?
Because that doesn't go through building regulations.
Yeah.
If someone asks you to change their windows from the 15th of June, so from now really, because you're not going to have the windows ordered and installed before the 15th of June, if you're starting now,
Yeah.
then you're sort of straight away into the new regulations for that.
Right.
So that's just a little bit different from the grace period that you usually have.
Okay, well, that's interesting, as a lot of HBXL software users are, as I said, home extenders and do a lot of renovation projects. So, this is really important to the job costs and what they've been quoting customers, which is naturally why they're speaking to the support team saying, right, what's happening? So as I say, we'll go through this slowly in some detail. Andy's very knowledgeable and has put together a lot of this presentation for us to run through these. But yeah, it's interesting to reflect how much it's actually going to impact the projects that have already been quoted that may well end up be going through building regs post the 15th of June. So why have the building regs changed? It feels like yet again, but the last time really there was any significant change was back in 2016. So, oh my goodness, 6 years has passed. Where has that gone? And obviously, the building regs changes are all part of the government's bigger plan to reach net zero carbon emissions. Obviously, homes make a significant contribution to the world carbon kind of problem, the carbon emissions. And the construction industry is expected to assist with that improvement. This time, as Andy was talking to me before this session, it's all about the in-use kind of carbon usage as opposed to the actual construction process. So it's about how the homeowner is actually going to utilise the project, how much energy they are going to use while utilising that project during its that building during its use. Ultimately, this is going to culminate in about 3 years' time, so in 2025, with the future homes and building standards, and that's going to come into force. So everyone has slowly got to gear up over the next 3 years to this new future homes standards. And obviously HBXL is with all our users on that journey, and we'll be updating the software as appropriate. Like we do with all of our software. So whether it's EstimatorXpress, PlansXpress, Health and Safety Expert, Contract Expert, etc., we are always, as part of your subscription, whether that's support and updates or your software subscription, keeping you up to date with those changes. So specifically in terms of the building regs changes from June 15th to the June 15th. So the updates are to approved documents F and L. Am I right? F and L.
That's right.
They're updated. And we've got 2 new approved documents, that's 0 and S. Is that right, Andy?
O and S. Yes.
O and S, sorry, I'm not enunciating very well. O and S. These changes, as we've mentioned earlier in this conversation, they're applying to both new builds, residential and non-residential, and that includes, importantly, a big emphasis on home extensions and renovations. As I mentioned before, Jordan from Comera Energy has shared some really great advice about incorporating solar and batteries and electric vehicle charging points into projects. And clearly they've never been more relevant today, but we'll talk more about that later. But it does link into these building regs in terms of the expectation of government on building firms. Also, as I said before, I cannot claim to understand all the ins and outs of building regs. I have renovated several homes for profit, but I'm not a builder by trade. Father, civil engineer, and builder and developer himself. So Andy, I'm going to have to hand over to you here to run through the 4 building regulations documents, the changes and the impact on the software that you, among the rest of the software development team, have had to apply to EstimatorXpress and PlansXpress. So I'm going to bring up a few slides. Bear with me, guys, while I do so, as I might just faff a moment while I do that. And we are going to be starting with document F. Is that right, Andy, in terms of ventilation?
Yeah, so document F is the ventilation,
Okay.
existing ventilation regulations, but they've been renewed. So
Right, okay. So you can see the slides there, Andy, yes?
I've got the slides, thank you, Joe. Yeah.
Great stuff. Okay, so over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. So I mean, one of the things, well, with part F, one of the things that they've discovered over the last few years of insulating houses much better than they have been is that actually, with people living in them, producing moisture just by breathing, sweating, cooking, having showers. Obviously, people do have extract ventilation and they open windows and things, but there has been broadly a discovery that we're causing a bit too much mold in people's houses, dampness and mold. And so these ventilation changes are really just an increase to what is already required in terms of how much air throughput you need to have. So there's two separate things. For new builds, there's a little bit of an increase in the amount of ventilation you have to have. So it'd usually be in trickle vents in your windows. And so your window provider should be pretty much on top of what needs to be happening. But obviously, as a builder, you need to be aware as well that there has been a bit of an increase there. So, but more significantly is for the renovation world, where it used to be the case that if you were putting a replacement window or replacing all the windows in a property, if they didn't have trickle vents in, it was a decision really for the homeowner whether they wanted to have trickle vents in the new windows or not. The assumption being that you were making things no worse than they were to start with. But actually, if it's a well-installed window and it's a good quality window, it's been discovered that actually by changing that window, you're significantly reducing the amount of air that kind of leaks in and around the window. So they've now changed that. So you do have to have trickle vents now in windows, unless, of course, you have a mechanical ventilation system. But the vast majority of people are not going to have that, especially in a existing building. It'd be a nightmare to install.
So is there any impact on the software from this perspective then?
There isn't a huge impact on the software. You do just need to be a bit careful ordering your windows, that you make sure you're getting the right thing now. And we have upgraded our notes in PlansXpress, our building regulations notes, to reflect the changes, because we did have clauses that related to this. And so they have been updated.
All right. So fairly minor in nature, but just a flag to be aware of.
That's right.
I guess we're saying. All right. So I guess on to the approved document L, conservation of fuel and power. Is there a bit more of a significant impact there, Andy?
Yes, I think this is the major change for people, really. Part L, although I'm going to split it into two. I'm going to look at it in two parts, one for the new build and one for extensions and renovation, because they've always been separate Part L documents. They've now been clubbed together into one, but that doesn't mean that one has changed much more than the other. So we'll have a look at them separately.
All righty. So new build.
So we're going to have a bit of a look at new build first. So new build, in terms of the U values, which is usually what changes a lot as building regulations progress, very little's actually changed for new builds. There's a bit of an increase in what they think you should have for roof insulation, but it's not hugely significant. I think it's an extra, if you've got the sort of the rock wool in your roof, I think it's an extra 100 millimeters of that. It's not going to be a huge cost difference for builders.
All right.
And there's also potentially slightly more significantly, what they kind of recommend, they have this sort of model house that they use in their SAP calculation, and that house is kind of a recommended starting place for how to design. And in that house, they do have better quality windows and doors than they used to have in terms of their U values. So they would now probably be required to be an A+ energy rating.
So presumably those are more expensive.
They would be probably more expensive, but the glazing industry has moved on quite a lot in the last few years, so it's much more achievable now than it was to get these really high quality windows. So yes, that's in terms of sort of improving the fabric. That's all that's really happening for new builds. But there is some renewed emphasis on renewable energy, and I think that's going to become even more so with the Future Homes standards, as far as I understand it at the moment.
All right. So there's a few more acronyms we've got in there.
We have got a lot of acronyms here. Yeah.
So PV being.
Yes. So PV is the photovoltaic electricity producing panels that you have on your roof.
Yeah, also we're talking solar there, obviously.
Yeah, solar panels. So they are, again, with this model, this model starting point house, has a significant amount more photovoltaic capacity than would be common now under these regulations. So that you don't have to do this, because you can offset, one thing against another in the building regulations, particularly for a new build house.
Yeah.
Obviously just to sort of mention that they have tweaked the SAP calculation in the model, but obviously your SAP provider should be well on top of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, this is a kind of a new emphasis on you really should have some PV on the roof. And obviously it's going to help people with energy bills at the moment if that's the case as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the other thing there is the WWHRS, which is quite
yeah, that's a mouthful.
Quite an acronym. So it's a wastewater heat recovery.
Oh dear, sounds like there was an incident there.
There was a little bit.
Okay. So wastewater heat recovery.
It's a wastewater heat recovery system.
Right. Okay.
You may well have come across them before, but they're basically a contraption for getting some of the warm water that's running down when you have a shower, running down your waste pipe, and heating the cold water that's going to feed your shower from that heat. So they think about 70% reduction in heat requirement by using that. So
okay, that's quite significant.
So yeah, I think it's been unusual to have these installed up to now, but again, there's kind of a renewed emphasis saying actually these are quite an efficient way of saving a bit of energy. I think it's suggested that it's maybe about a 10-year payback period on them, which is pretty good for any kind of renewable energy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a new thing that I think people are going to be installing a lot more. Yeah. And then what has been trialed quite a lot in the media recently is the fact that we're going to start needing heat pumps, to air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps in the future as a kind of a replacement for gas and oil boilers. So in this regulation, you have to have considered whether it would be a good idea to use heat pumps as a heat source. You don't have to do it. In fact, even if you thought it was a good idea, you still don't have to do it, but you do need to have considered it.
So is it effectively, excuse my ignorance here, Andy, is it a bit of a mix and match between these items that the homeowner or the builder can choose between in order to kind of meet obligations, or do they just have to say, yes, I've considered it, but no, thank you, I don't want to? And what's a legitimate reason for saying no, I don't want to? Is it just no?
Yeah, well, I mean, even with energy prices as they are at the moment, I think people are still finding that a heat pump's about as expensive as a gas boiler is in terms of the energy use. So that would make it a bit touch and go at the moment whether it was worthwhile. I think that what we'll find is that they will probably largely replace oil-fired boilers in places where you're not on the gas grid, because they're generally more expensive to run. There's a whole load of more infrastructure needing tanks in the garden and that sort of thing. So I think they'll be cost effective for that, and probably not hugely cost effective if there's an existing gas grid in place.
Okay.
But so I would expect to see more of them. I mean, I have started to see more of them already.
Yeah, and I guess the payback period on these is going to start to look better as the gas prices rise. I think people, it's a bit similar with solar PV, isn't it? In the sense that the payback in the past, I can't even, I'm shooting from the hip here, but it was probably like 15, 20 years. You're now looking at a much shorter period, sub 10 years in terms of your PV, just by the inflation of electricity prices. Right now, it actually makes it look a more attractive option to a homeowner.
Yes, it will do, and I think it should get cheaper as more people kind of get used to installing them.
And the technologies, of course, improve, don't they, over time? It's a different kettle of fish to 10 years ago, perhaps in terms of the emergence of just the manufacturing techniques, etc., bringing prices. I say prices down. That's interesting. Nothing goes down, does it, in price, really?
Yeah, that's right.
Especially in construction. Okay, so that's the new build summary, is it, Andy?
I just had one other thing that actually occurred to me just before we started this, which it doesn't affect HBXL particularly, but it is worth mentioning for our users that there's been a change to how the airtightness tests work for new houses. Previously, you had to provide a couple of sample homes. If you're doing a big project, it might be a couple of sample homes. If you're doing a small housing estate, it may be one. You now do have to test them all, because they found,
really? Right.
there's a kind of found that well, I guess not everything was as the sample job was, and things just weren't performing as they hoped they would.
Wow, so that's going to put up the testing cost now.
I think, but don't quote me on this. I think there are slightly watered down testing criteria for the tests you actually do have to do. So there are two options now, and I don't understand air testing, so I don't.
Well, I will not put you on the spot anymore. But
I don't know what the two options are, but I think they've tried to mitigate it a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. All righty. So I guess moving on to extensions then, and how it impacts.
Yeah, so extensions I think are going to be much more impacted by this. There's been quite an increase in the U values that are needed for most elements in an extension. I think in the 2016 regulations, when the new build regulations came out, they increased what you needed to do significantly. And there was very little or no increase at all in what you had to do for an extension. This is kind of somewhat correcting that. So that the extensions are going to be much closer to what you would have to do in a new build now than they have been for the last 6 years.
So you're catching up basically with the 2016 regs for extensions.
It does feel a bit like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
all right.
I do have there was an increase in all the elements, U values. Walls are significantly increased, so that's going to have quite an impact on people, because obviously most of the time when you make a building an extension, you've got a limited amount of space. And if you're suddenly having to put a lot more insulation in your walls, that's the real squeeze. So that's really worth noting. Roof and floor insulation, again, a bit of an increase. I think that'll have much less of an impact on people. It's much easier to achieve. And they're not quite as stringent as the new builds still. And then again, better windows and doors. They're again not as stringent as the new builds. I don't really know why, but that's a thing. So
okay, all right. So they're only looking for B energy rating windows, where it was A+ in new build.
Yes, that's right. So I think I don't think all providers provide an A+, an A, a B, a C. So you might just find that it's
A.
They're all A's, or they're all I've seen A++. I think they might even go higher than that. I think I saw a heat pump with an A+++ rating. So.
Wow, they must be good. They must be good. So I think you've prepared a table for us.
I have got a little table just so you can see what the figures are, and I've said it's significant increases in. Well, I say an increase, not an increase in U value, it's a decrease in U value, but it's a significant increase in the amount of insulation you need to put in.
Okay.
So you can see from there that doors and windows need to improve a bit. I don't think that's hugely significant for anybody. As I said, the glazing industry's moved on quite a lot, and I think that's pretty easy to achieve now.
Yeah.
Walls is a huge decrease in U value, so a huge increase in the amount of insulation you need. So that is now exactly the same as the requirement for a new build.
Right. Okay.
So it'd be interesting to see how that kind of pans out. But
so as you were saying
watch
before,
out
does
for
that basically start to look like it's going to narrow the footprint of the kind of like usable space within an extension in order to kind of get this insulation in?
I think that probably is. I think that probably is what's going to happen. Obviously, you know, various companies are trying to make their insulation as thin and efficient as possible to mitigate it, but I think that is inevitably going to be the case. There's always this thing in building regulations where you can kind of offset one thing against another.
Yeah.
But because the walls are such a significant part of the house, I think if you say I'm not going to make my walls quite as good, you're going to really struggle to.
You have to do everything else.
To drag that back without spending a huge amount of money on triple glazing and, you know, that sort of stuff. So I think it probably will be the case that you end up pinching a little bit of space.
Okay. Yeah.
And then yes, floors and roofs, less of a dramatic impact, but it is still a bit extra insulation there.
All right. So that should be pretty easily achievable.
I think so, yes.
Okay. And so part L goes on.
It does a little bit.
Very wide ranging.
Yes. So there's this little bit that we talked about, the heat pumps and the requirement to think about possibly having a heat pump if you build a new house. There's also a requirement that if you're putting in a new heating system, whether that's into a new build or a replacement, you have to design it so that it could in the future take a heat pump. So, so a heat pump works at a lower heat than a gas boiler would.
Sure.
It's for efficiency's sake, really, which means that you need to have bigger heat emitters. So you need to have bigger radiators. Underfloor heating is really good because that's effectively a huge heat emitter, your whole floor. So you do have to design them now so that they could be plugged into a heat pump.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I think it's going to pretty much make microbore pipework a thing of the past. Certainly for heating systems, just because it loses too much heat for a low heat system.
Right. Okay. So bearing in mind that then, so presumably there's a fair number of changes as done then to EstimatorXpress.
Yes, it's had a fair impact on us. If you just put up the next slide. So obviously we've made changes to our specifications where that's necessary, particularly, you know, new build roofs, and then walls, roofs, and floors for the extensions. And then the windows and doors. I mean, we don't tend to say too much about the U value of our windows and doors, but it's just something to make you aware of, really, that you do need to be ordering the right thing. You know,
I guess we've got quite a wide-ranging catalogue from Crystal Direct, so you just obviously got to be thinking about, is this going into you know, new build, is it going into the extension, is this a replacement window post the 15th of June, and choosing the appropriate window from the library.
That's right, and obviously they're being updated for us, so that'll be, you know, relevant to the new standards.
Okay, great stuff. All right, and some new calculators.
So yes, completely new calculators so that we can start doing air source heat pumps. You know, they work quite similar to the boilers, but we've got new calculators there, and we've also got new calculators for the wastewater heat recovery systems, which we've never had before.
Okay.
There will also be a updated PV calculator, but that already exists in our software, but we will update that.
Okay, lovely.
And then, of course, as there was for Part F, there'll be an upgrade to our building regulations notes to take account of the changes
in PlansXpress.
On PlansXpress.
Okay. All righty. Well, enough of Doc L. let's move on. I'm excited to know about Doco and overheating. And behind me, you can see I've got some big glazed panels. I get a bit toasty here. I'm known to overheat in this particular position. So tell us about kind of overheating and how it's going to impact builders moving forwards.
Yeah, so again, this is completely new regulation, kind of borne out by what's been seen to be happening in real life, which is that a lot of people get really overheated in their houses. We've had, you know, last few summers we've had quite a few pretty hot heat waves, and certainly I know my house just gets, you know, if you've got a heat wave for a week, it gets hotter and hotter in your house day by day,
uncomfortably
until
so,
it's
isn't it?
Really quite unbearable. So in recognition of that, and I think particularly in recognition that these houses which are better insulated, which our newer houses are, that can be a real problem because they're really good at
retaining that heat,
keeping hold of their heat. Yeah. So this is totally new, and this is a set of regulations which are really designed to mitigate some of that overheating, and in recognition of the fact that we think things are going to get hotter still.
Oh dear. Yes.
That's there. So there are two elements to it. So I've split it into two slides. So we've got one which is about solar gain, which, as it suggests, is just about how much sun you're getting in through your windows and heating up your rooms. You know, that's the main reason your house gets hot, really, is the sun coming through the windows.
Yeah.
Obviously, it does come through in other places too, but that's what really gets you hot.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to limit that. This is, by the way, this is just for new builds. There's not a lot you can do.
I was going to ask that actually. Does it impact extensions? But no, the answer is no.
It doesn't. No. Although obviously, you know, be sensible. Bear it in mind. So it's about restricting the amount of glazing in the main, particularly south and west facing elevations. South facing, obviously, because that's where the sun is in the heat of the day. West facing, because that's where the sun is in the evening just before you want to go to bed. So that can really add a bit of extra heat when you really don't want it. And so there's a whole set of regulations about what percentage of glazing a room can have, and it's as a percentage of the floor area of the room.
Right. Okay.
So, you know, go and have a look at the details of that, because there's quite a bit there. Hopefully, if you've got architects involved, they'll be doing that work.
So I guess this is what they do on the continent, isn't it? In terms of the small, it's almost counterintuitive, because in this country we want open glazed, big, bifold, big, open floor plan, big glazing. But it's obviously we're now having to kind of, I guess, in some cases, wind back a little bit on that.
That's right. Yeah.
And so you've got to do that calculation for your new build, then the glazed area as a percentage of the floor area. Yeah.
So there's a sort of an element of restricting the amount of glazing, but also that you can get around that a little bit. If you do want more glazing, it encourages you to put in some kind of shading systems, shutters. Or awnings, any kind of permanent, it would need to be a permanent way of being able to shut out the sun when you wanted to. So you often see flats now in city centres, particularly, where in a city centre the heating problem's bigger than it would be on the edges of town. You often see them with shades now over the windows, so that I think that sort of stuff will be more emphasised.
Okay.
And then the other thing is to have cross ventilation across your building if you can, so you don't have, you have the ability to get air through your building instead of just heating up that one elevation.
Oh, okay.
So that's the solar gains element. The other element of it is on the next slide, which is about basically getting it cool again in the evenings, which is what they call purge ventilation.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. Purge ventilation, new term.
So you know what it's like. You sort of get hotter and hotter during the day, and you think, great, it's come to the evening. it's going to cool down, be fine. And you find the wind dies
Yeah,
completely. There's no
no air movement.
there's no air movement. So this is really to try and help you get your house cool again after the day before you go to bed, because high nighttime temperatures are dreadful for sleep, which is obviously, you know, dreadful for our productivity and for our health. And it actually can be quite dangerous for people just not to be able to cool down at any, you know, part of the night or day. So this is about, it's basically about trying to get as many windows open as possible, get as much airflow through, and, you know, obviously before you go to bed, because you're going to have to shut windows and doors so people can't just wander in. So it's about trying to, get that evening cooling. So the main change with this is going to be that you're going to need to have more of your windows need to be openable. And, you know, give you a good opening area. So not that they open on a, you know, a kind of a narrow little opening, but you can really throw them open.
Right. Okay. So this is really from the design perspective. I'm not.
It will be from the design perspective.
And I guess that will obviously flow through into estimating. I don't know whether kind of more openable windows cost more. I don't know. Perhaps it does, but
I think it's minimal, really.
It's minimal,
but it does cost a bit more to put an opening casement in than it would to have a fixed casement.
So I guess it's more just being aware of this when designing or accepting a design from your architect, etc. That, you know, you've got the glaze percentage correct and you've got openable windows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
So again, from our perspective, doesn't make a huge difference to our software, but we do have building regs notes in PlansXpress again updated.
Okay.
For that.
Great stuff. So I guess we're getting there in terms of the building regs changes. So we've then got, I believe, a change to document. Well, actually, no, it's not a change. It's brand new, isn't it? Sorry.
It is another
S.
new document. Yeah.
Electrical vehicle charging. So yeah, tell us more about that. And is this new builds or extensions? Both? What's the...
So this is really a regulation aimed at new builds.
Right,
obviously,
okay.
a lot of people have been putting in vehicle charging points when they, you know, when they buy a car that needs a charging point, really. So this is saying, well, actually, we're going to expect everybody to have a car that's electric within the next, I think it's before 2040, isn't it? They're going to ban the sale of non-electric cars.
I bet they're trying to bring that forward as well.
So this is, well, car manufacturers may bring it forward as well. Certainly the ones who are ahead of the game are going to push for it, aren't they?
Yeah.
So this is in preparation for that, really, and
Okay.
it's silly to need to retrofit one if you can put one in now. So basically, it's a pretty simple regulation on the surface, in that it just requires basically all new builds to have an electric vehicle charging point. There are some slightly more complex rules about if you've got a flats, how many charging points you need to have.
So presumably you have to have a parking space, because if you don't have a parking space, where the heck do you put this?
There's stuff in there for if you have designated parking kind of on the street, off street, in a parking space. There's a whole load of ins and outs when you look at it. But as a simple headline, it's, you know, everybody has to install one of these now. So we to make that possible, we've put in, and well, as if it's possible without a HBXL calculator, but we have put a new calculator into EstimatorXpress for EV charging.
Okay.
So it can be part of your estimate straight away. And the other thing that it's just worth noting, actually, that I think the government have just changed the rules on getting a discount from the government for installing them.
On EV charging, yeah.
On EV charging. So we do there's a facility in our calculator for applying discount. The discount used to be available to homeowners only, I think. It's now switched, so it's only available to housing associations, landlords, and flat owners. which I think is in recognition that it's getting a bit cheaper to do it.
Yeah.
For normal people. So it's not a huge cost. It's just that it's cheaper to do it up front when you're building a house than it is to then have to go back and do it again later.
Yeah, and I would suspect as well, and there's going to be, I'm kind of actually kind of moving into the next section of this chat today, actually about the homeowner expectation and what people are going to expect as they move forward with buying a new home, or what their, or what their builder is able to deliver. I think that's part of the kind of the psychological shift, I think, that's going to be happening. In the past, perhaps offering an EV charging point or solar on your project was a bit novel and kind of set you apart. I think it's going to more and more become an expectation that is what is required when on people's checklist of what do I need, especially as bills get higher and prices at the pump become even more astronomical. So get me started, Andy. Well, thank you for that whistle stop tour. Oh, I've cut you off though, in the sense that PlansXpress has got a building regs update.
It has again for that.
Yeah, great stuff. So I'm going to let you draw breath for a moment, but feel free to pipe up as I continue on now, because I'm going to be talking a little bit more on renewables and I guess the expectation that homeowners have, as I was saying. But to finish off on this building regs point, as Andy's now concluded, so cheers, Andy. There's going to be an article that kind of describes all of this on the HBXL website, so head to news and you can see the key points there. There's also going to be this video uploaded to the website with a PDF of the notes, the slides, so you can have a look at those over a cuppa. And you'll also be sent this automatically as a video, having attended today. But bottom line, in terms of your EstimatorXpress and PlansXpress, we're going to be updating the software for you as of around 15th of June with these changes. So if you've got your support and updates package in place, or you've got a live software subscription, that will flow through into your software. If you are out of date with your support and updates, you need to speak to the team, and if you renew, then you'll get all of that in the software. And as I said before, same happens with Health and Safety Expert. The minute the regs changes, for example, in April, I think it was on April the 6th, the new PPE regs changed. Health and Safety Expert was updated to make sure that you were complying with that. Same with Contracts Expert whenever there's a change, and obviously post Brexit, lots is happening in those environments. So we do that legwork to keep you up to date, so you don't have to. So it's clear, obviously, if you're a builder or designer, the building regs changes are going to impact you. Perhaps there'll be a small price increase in the work that you're delivering based on these, but clearly you've got to design some of this stuff in and make sure that it's in your quotes. But I think, moving on, it's clear to me that homeowners want more than a builder just doing the basics. They need a builder who knows their stuff, who's got a bit more of experience within renewables and got some expertise in this area, or know somebody who can help. And that's where our partner Comera Energy come in. And they can help provide you with support on a range of renewable energy products and their full installation. So you can basically sub the whole lot out to an expert and sound very clever having done it, but they've done the hard work and you make the margin on it. But more of that later. So why is this important right now? Well, I think I'm probably stating the obvious, because unless you've been living in a hole, there's obviously the Ukraine crisis going on. Homeowners are much more clued up in terms of their bills. They're concerned about price escalation. It's going up again in price cap changing again in October. Prices aren't going to go down, are they? They're going to go up. Homeowners want some energy independence. and renewables are a way of helping reduce energy bills. Interestingly, VAT has been scrapped in June on renewables, so I understand it, and there is this incentive, this discount, as Andy was saying, on EV charging points. So depending on the project type, it's worth exploring that. And clearly adds value, as we've been saying, and particularly if it's a new build, you know, on selling that property, it can be more attractive if it's got these things built in, you know, from the start. And people really do have concerns now about the climate. I think it's, you know, just talking about the overheating, Andy, as we were saying before, it's pretty evident now. And on another point, actually, Andy and I were talking earlier today about kind of shrinkage and heave in the ground on, you know, on, like say, for new build plots. We're going to have more of this impact on construction from the ground, you know, from the ground up. So everybody's concerned about it. So really making sure that you're genned up as soon as possible is key. So there's a video that you can find out a bit more about what comera can do for you. So why should you, the builder, be interested in renewable? Well, clearly, the point of this session today was about updated building regs. That puts some onus on you to be interested, to be involved, to understand the options available for you. So that's, you know, clear directive. Obviously boosts your credentials as a home, as a choice between different builders for a homeowner. If you're the one that knows more of your stuff about this, you know, you're going to look better. And that means you can provide a kind of more of a one-stop shop for the entire construction project, especially when working with a partner like Comera Energy, as I was saying. They can basically come in, do the whole lot, get out quickly, and you take the additional profit margin on that piece of work. That gives you the opportunity to make a little more on each project for a minimal effort without the hassle, without having to learn how to do all of the installation and become a supplier, and with all the associated accreditations, etc. Bottom line, gives you a bit of a competitive edge, I guess. So Comera do a bit more than just solar. They do battery charging points. They do battery charging points, battery systems. They do EV charging points. So I'm merging those two together. Apologies. So solar PV. They've got battery systems, and they've got EV charging points. And we'll do a little bit more of a dive on some of those points in just a moment. So I guess we all know some of these points, but just doesn't hurt to go over why we should be bothered about solar. It's obviously clean, quiet, sustainable, lasts between 15 to 25 years. The payback has come right down because bills have gone up so significantly. I don't know about you, but mine has doubled this month. You know, I'm seriously considering as a homeowner, I think I need to be looking at this. So that's an interesting one, because it's not just about new build, it's in existing properties. You know, if your customers are having work done, you can be offering this as a kind of like a value add, something else you can say, look, I know about this. So yeah, they last between about 15 to 25 years, and obviously from a homeowner's perspective, it's going to provide significant savings on their bills. Now with the technologies, the self-cleaning kind of finishes and what have you on the panels, they require minimal maintenance, and you can obviously get packages now where that maintenance is built in for the homeowner's price, and you know that it's the actual responsibility is purely between the homeowner and Comera Energy once that installation is done. So what else can we tell you about this? Well, most properties tend to be suitable. So it's not a question of, oh my goodness, how am I going to know whether this particular project is it going to be suitable for? Pretty much most properties are. Comera can obviously advise you. They'll tell you if it's not right. And to just to be clear that they work in different directions, so southeast or west facing. you know, in my naivety, I thought in the past they had to be south-facing. They don't. And they work in UK weather. You know, you don't have to have bright sunshine like the continent. You know, it can be cloudy and overcast. That, you know, that can be enough to get the solar panels working their magic. You do, however, need a roof of about 10 meters squared to put the kind of the right size array to provide enough energy. I mean, clearly you see different solar panels of like one big one on the ground somewhere, you know, but really to get enough energy for your home, you need one of at least 10 meters squared. And obviously the bigger the property and the greater the energy usage, the more panels you need. But you know, rule of thumb, about 10 meters squared is what's required. And don't worry about things like chimneys and velux windows around, because solar can be installed around that, which is quite smart. I wasn't aware of that. So very flexible now in terms of how they can be installed, and there's varying qualities as well and varying finishes. So depending on the property type, you know, you can go quite sophisticated in terms of their look for the property. So how are they working? I mean, it's very straightforward, really. So your solar panels are converting sunlight to DC electricity. You've then got your inverter converting that DC. So I don't know if you can see that. And the home is then obviously using that, and anything else is sent back to the grid. And you can sell some of that electricity that's unused back to the grid. But better still is to use a battery storage system. So rather than that excess being sent back to the grid and sold back, to be quite fair, it's not at a great rate these days. There was obviously incentives in the past for selling your energy back to the grid. It's better to have now a battery storage system in place. That is a system which stores any excess usage generated by the system in the day. So when you've got the sun, anything that you're not using, the battery storage system saves it basically. It's a big, as the name suggests, it's a battery. And then when you haven't got the sun out, so early, so in the evening or early morning, you can then be using the energy saved to the battery. And basically you've got your free solar energy all day and night, as long as you've got the battery system in place. So to be honest, other than the expense, I don't know why you wouldn't do that now. And then any excess that you've got after all of that, you can still then sell that back to the grid. Even better still, as if we've all got loads and loads of money to do all of this, but you know, the ultimate is obviously then to hook up your either your solar or your battery point to your EV charging point, so that you're actually charging up your car with this energy from the sun. So obviously you do need the right spot to do this. Clearly you need a parking space, as we were talking before. So you know, a lot of people, this is going to be on the driveway or in the garage. So you've got to be able to fit your EV charging point to a suitable structure. And interestingly, it's a lot faster than charging with a 3-pin plug. You can charge your EV during the off-peak hours, or as we're saying, directly from the battery. And you can then monitor your charge activity. So I think the holy grail really is solar, battery point, EV charging point. But I guess that's not necessarily suitable for everybody, but I think that's the trio that you'd be looking for. So why would a builder be interested in this? Well, if you were just doing solar, for example, I'm going to show you a table in a moment about the type of margin that you could be making. But on solar, on the small system, on the basic kind of lower end system, you could earn, you know, between £1,000 and £2,000 in margin on the installation. So whether that's a brand new project or one that you go back to your customer and, you know, a previous customer said, we now offer solar PV installations, that extension we did for you last year, we can quote on that for you. Or, you know, from a new customer perspective, if you're talking about projects coming up, you can obviously sell in your expertise there. Again, a bit more detail in a moment, but Comera Energy do all of the work on that. So they're doing the, they do the design. They effectively can do the survey from photos and images that you send across of the property. With a few questions to you, they can then produce the full design and quotation, which you can then present to your client, put your margin on top. And then they come in and do the installation if the customer wants to go ahead. So Comera does the work, you can take that glory. But just on a solar system in its, on its own, so a budget system at say 15 meters squared, these prices were correct when this was recorded, but obviously everything changes, so don't take these all as gospel. I have to put that little caveat in there. But at that point it was 3,445 with a 30% margin on. There's 4.4k. So you'd make £1,000 straight on that installation without actually having to do the work. At the other end, a higher end system, 26 meters squared, 7.2k, 9.3 with your 30% margin. So you'd be making just over a couple of K, 1.2 almost on that. That's just for the solar. So if you end up with maintenance agreements that the homeowner ends up signing up to with Comera, you can make a margin on that. Similarly with the EV points or the battery storage systems. So you could create quite a nice package for the right client and make a few £1,000s on that installation. So how does it all get installed then? You wanted to know that it's not going to be a hassle, it's not going to be a faff. That's one thing that obviously I do know that a lot of builders, they don't like a homeowner getting someone else in to do something which kind of scuppers the build program and causes disruption. Understand that. So what does Comera Energy do? So once there is a level of interest from your client, they can then discuss with the distribution network operator whether or not they are able to hook up that particular property. If they say yes, then the design team at Comera can get that design drawn up, it confirmed. They can then confirm an installation date, and they get all of the panels, etc., ordered. They then undertake the installation. It can take from half a day to a few days, as agreed with yourself. Little disruption to keep costs down. If there's scaffolding up already up around the roof, they can use that scaffolding. If not, they would obviously have to book in additional scaffolding. They then give the homeowner directly the instructions. Any apps that that are required will be downloaded for the homeowner, and they provide all the warranties to the homeowner. So you don't have to worry as a builder that you're going to get lumbered with somebody else's PV system that perhaps is not that there would be, because there's no need to be, because Comera Energy only do high quality installations. But if there was something up in the future, you don't want to be responsible for that. So Comera look after all of that. So why Comera? Well, HBXL only we partner with really good companies. They've got tons of experience in solar PV, reliable, professional. They've got a practical understanding, as the slide suggests, on new builds and retrofits. Importantly, because a lot of the work that you do, I know, new building firms listening, it's about retrofit work. They've got the complete team of designers, engineers, project managers, installers, electricians, the whole lot. So they manage all of it. And as I was saying before, they only use what they call as tier one components and providers. So tier one being the top of the range installations. Despite there being the budget, the middle, and the kind of top end, they're only still within this tier one panel usage, because there's they don't want to be installing panels that people need to go back and check on within short order. So they only use quality systems with quality components, and they've got these strong warranties behind them, so it all looked after for you. All right, and for the homeowner, importantly. So that's their contact point post installation. Once you walked off site and the project's completed, any questions or queries about the solar is back to Comera Energy. So if you'd like to know a little bit more about that, we have our coach, Jordan Davies of Comera Energy. You can book your session at hbxl.co.uk, book your renewable energy coaching session. So you can pause the video if you want, and you can jot that down, or you can call the team and they will put you in touch. Also, if you'd like to watch another of the renewable energy videos, you can do that by going to our /power hour videos webpage. There's all sorts of other great videos on there in terms of business improvement, managing your cash flow, making the most of the 2022 boom, how to stay on top of inflation, all those kind of things. There's loads and loads of good content there about helping you run your firm. And of course, if you would like to know any more about HBXL software, so maybe there's a software product that you don't yet own, or you've got queries about the software product that you do have and how the building regs are applied through the software, you can give us a call. So, but for product demos, call hello@hbxl.co.uk, there's the sales team's phone number and the website, and you can have a short demo. But equally, as I say, if you have got support queries, that's same as support@hbxl.co.uk, and the support number is on the website. So I think I'm probably about there in terms of everything that we wanted to talk about. Although I should give Andy a massive thank you for your time today, and it's a lot of gathering of information and its implementation within EstimatorXpress and PlansXpress. So cheers for all your work on
no
that.
problem.
And guys, any questions or queries, do drop us a line. And yeah, if you've got anything that you'd like to ask Andy, email support@hbxl.co.uk with an FAO, Andy, and that will get to him. Okay, well, what I'm going to do now is I am going to say goodbye to everybody. So thank you, Andy, and thank you everybody for watching, and look out for some more of our Team HBXL advice session. So thanks a lot. Bye, everybody.